Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to Mastering Self. We are in week 5 already of Mastering Self, where we're going to be leaning into the virtue of our personality typologies. So before we move further ahead, I'd love to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which Sarah and I are calling from, the Arakwal people of the Bundjalung Nation, paying our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and recognizing their continued connection to land, water, and beautiful community. And so in today's session, as always, reviewing the last 7 days and how you've gone and what's worked, what hasn't. And then we move into the content for this week around leaning into our virtue and exploring the traits of our typologies around stress points when we're fatigued, and then what do the traits look like when we're in growth. And then we'll round out the session with a final 30 minutes where we're deepening into stillness and body awareness off the back of last week's body awareness session and letting go of tension. And for today, it'll be Sarah and myself predominantly, and Lawrence in the discussion room that will be facilitating for you. And so wherever you are tuning in from, whatever part of the day you're in, let's take a moment. Yeah. As you have been for as many times as you have been throughout the week, just simply getting comfortable where you are, closing your eyes for a moment. As you do, just taking a breath in, letting it all the way out. All the way out. Gently taking the next breath in. And allowing the breath of its own accord to simply start to slow down with each breath out. As you do that, as you allow that, bringing your awareness to any tension that may be sitting in and around your eyes, the muscles around your eye, softening and letting that tension melt away. Gently brushing your awareness across your forehead. Any tension that you notice there, letting that wash away. Down towards your mouth, your jaw, relaxing your jaw. Breathing through the nose, mouth closed, jaw open, and tongue gently, softly resting on the roof of your mouth. With your next breath out, washing your awareness across the top of both shoulders, down, and letting the shoulders melt away, down, away from the ears. And if you soften the shoulders, is there any more space? left to soften again, to soften again, and to soften again. As you release the tension within the triangle of tension, allowing yourself to relax, release, and to return to your natural state of being. When you're ready, gently opening your eyes.
So just a short review. Can everyone hear me well? Good, cool. I'm just testing this new headphones. Just a short review on the last 7 days. What have you noticed within the Enneagram, within your typology specifically? Have you noticed any resistance or aversion or any attachment or desire in particular areas of your life? And it can be as small as just simply not wanting this to happen and rather wanting this to happen. Very small, very tiny, or maybe some more macro event. So where have you noticed that playing out, and how have you been with letting go of tension? And the practice that Dan just run us through. So we're just going to go into a breakout room with pairs and just exploring how the last 7 days has been and what's been coming up for you.
Enjoy the social space.
Enjoy. So you're just gonna pop up in a minute from Lawrence, and then you can join the breakout room.
And stop the recording there, Lawrence.
My result. I did do the Enneagram this afternoon. I'm not sure whether it's come through. I'm a late starter, just how I like it. I'm going to come around that bend.
I've just sent you your results.
What is it? Great. I'll have a look.
And so, what did everyone notice in the last 7 days? What did you notice for yourself as you delved into the typologies, an introduction to the typologies last week? What did you notice around some of the traits in your typology? What came up for you?
I can talk about being the peacemaker with my mum, my sister, who are also in here. Somewhat felt like I had to be this peacemaker that kept the peace between the whole family. So I was in the middle, and then I had my mum, my sister, my dad all surrounding me. And I had to be I created this idea, I had to be the golden child to be loved. So if I was ever angry, I was like, oh, I can't be angry. Or I'd just find somewhere else to take it out rather than take it out on my family. But it always came back full circle, and then I'd end up reacting to them anyway. So it's taken a fair bit of communication nowadays to sort of see that the way I am isn't in if I'm being like rude or angry. It's like that's my own thing. It's not, I don't need to be any particular way within the family dynamic for the other person to feel okay, or for my family to feel like they're okay when I'm just experiencing my own things. That's sort of accepting that I'm allowed to feel angry or upset in front of my family. Yeah.
100%. Thanks for that sharing, Bridge. And, whilst expression and healthy and useful expression, expressing to others and communicating to others what's coming up for us, how we're feeling, what we're thinking, without necessarily pointing fingers, is really, really useful for everyone, but particularly so for a typology 9, expression. And because often a type 9 would have felt that they couldn't or shouldn't on behalf of maintaining the peace, and so being able to express when it's probably one of the scariest things to do. So thanks for and that you have something to say there as well, and that it's okay for this to be playing out for you and to express that. Thanks for sharing that, Bridge. Let's hear some more juicy stories. Come on, Michelle, what do you got? What do you got?
I don't have much, unfortunately. So I'm just scribbling notes. I'm kind of reflecting on the week now in hindsight. Things definitely happened, but I haven't done the work yet to reflect on them and ask myself the question, how was that my typology showing up? How was it my ego? So I had a nice chat to Ness just then about an argument that I had over the weekend with my husband, and how I showed up in that argument and what the benefits of that were, perhaps trying to see the benefits of it. So yeah, I would like to do just a little bit of self-reflection on that, I think, and match that to my typology.
Yeah, awesome. And how is everyone, that reminds me, how is everyone going with their self-awareness practice throughout the week? Just seeking one moment where you're noticing whatever the self-awareness practice that has been set at the end of the session, noticing that behavior from the typology, or noticing that behavior from the ego or the superego. How are you going with, just getting a really simple journal entry down? Noticed this, and there was this thought about it, and I felt like this. If it hasn't really been a thing for you to this point, because I've also been doing the Enneagram assessment, the health and well-being assessment, and I've been trying to meditate, and it feels like there's a fair bit going on. That's okay. And maybe now to start to layer that in, just once a day, pick the same time, same place, maybe after your sitting practice, or maybe the last thing you do before you go to bed, or maybe the first thing you do when you jump in the car after your day's work, to close out the day's worth of work, and then off you go home, and you kind of have this switch point into a rest and recovery mode. So yeah, let's hear from one more person.
I could speak to number 2, the helper. I came close with 4, but I've resonated most so far with helper. I'm going to give more attention to the other 3 this week. However, I noticed a lot. I noticed in my thinking before my acting, catching the voice in my head, and how much a helper type that falls into often. Very much over responsible, and for example, someone will offer something to me and I'll think about taking it, and then the voice in my head's like, oh no, but you don't want to be trouble, like you don't want to cause more stress for them. It's like, and then I can catch that and realize, no, they've offered, they're offering you something, and how would you feel, if you've offered something, you mean it, you have to trust that. And the other example was, I was going to the shop and it was 10 minutes before closing, and I thought, oh no, I don't want to, the shopkeeper's going to hate me because I'm going to be that person at the end. I don't want, because I so much don't want to be disliked. It's so important for me to be liked as a helper. It's my way of surviving in the world,
To be loved,
yeah. And I just find it so enlightening, the Enneagram. Like, I feel like years worth of therapy. So I did therapy for years and it was wonderful, but I also feel like this is very effective. shining a light on a huge amount of stuff in one sitting. So yeah, very grateful. Thank you.
And thank you for sharing too, Georgina. And yeah, I love that you said that, shining a light on all of this, because to this point we're halfway through really, and it's all about being able to see. We don't even have to do anything with the patterns, but let's just start to be able to see the patterns. And if we can do that, we're 50% of the way there. It's huge. The position we place ourselves in being able to see, places us in a position of choice, the power of choice, to choose to engage that. And sometimes we still will, or to choose to engage an action or an expression of something that's more useful and more effective in the moment.
Yeah, and also a beautiful example, Georgina, what you mentioned of just a non-significant event, if you want to call it like that, just in the supermarket. Like, there's nothing really super extraordinary interesting about that, and that's what we can notice, huh? Like in the micro moments as well. So we don't have to be in an argument or in a particular unpleasant situation in order to start noticing these typology traits and so on playing out. It's really in the most simple moments in day-to-day life where also the magic happens in that sense. So yeah, beautiful example of that as well.
Yes, so useful, particularly as everyone goes off into the next 7 days and starts to seek, so that you can see. You know, it's if you can seek that one moment a day that you're going to journal, it means you're going to start to see more, which is placing you in a position of power, a power of choice there. Also, Georgina, thank you for providing so much in that short little sharing. That was an example of how significant receiving is. It's not always just about giving, and being able to receive as well. And when we say no to that, whilst it might be incredibly well intentioned, not being able to receive actually deprives another of the opportunity to give. And so if we can, it was a pretty tough thing for myself. So even when someone offers a compliment, right? Receiving a compliment, how well do people receive compliments here? I've learned to say thank you instead of, oh yeah, it's nothing, or don't worry about it, or as though it was a big thing, rather than a simple, clean and clear thank you, and receiving that. Yeah. Who here struggles to receive compliments? Some people, yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for your sharings. Let's dive in.
So we're gonna build further on the layers from the last few weeks. So last week, really the foundation of the Enneagram, starting to create awareness. We had some beautiful examples of Georgina and Bridget and Michelle sharing some of those examples where we can create more awareness, hey, around the typology, around the traits. Today, we're gonna lean into the virtue of the typology. So what does the typology look like under stress? And what does it look like when it's really healthy and it's really in its growth and in its path of transformation? So that's really what we're going to explore today.
And so a little bit of a recap on the Enneagram and personality altogether. Yeah, it really lies in the word personality. Yeah, it's a persona, a personal reality, your personality. It is completely, for the most part, 99%, based on a habituated set of thinking and behavioral patterns. And so when we say you are not your personality, why do we say that? Well, isn't it me? Isn't it who I am? Well, if it is a habituated set of thinking and behavioral patterns, thoughts and actions, what happens when there isn't a thought playing out for you, or there isn't an action playing out for you? Are you still you? Of course you are. You're still there. You're still you. Just because there's no thought playing out, even if it's momentary. So how could you possibly be your thought? A fleeting thing that comes and goes and is never the same thing. Do you come and go when the thought comes and goes? You're ever present, right? And how often do we maybe shame ourselves or judge ourselves or judge others based on the actions we see? We're not even our behaviors. How much of our behaviors changed since we were 5 to being a teenager to being in our 20s? But have you remained? Were you there the entire time? From being born right up until now? Were you ever present? Aware of all of the behaviors playing out and how they had shifted and changed? That is why we say you are not your personality. Yeah. So let's move into directions of growth and stress. Did you want to add something, Sarah?
Just to add a sort of a quote that I saw the other day, it's like we're all we're masters at being the same person today as what we were yesterday. It's actually really interesting if you think about it. To just be no different than the person that we were yesterday. We're mastered at that. And that's what we're showing you, those traits, those habits. They're just repeating itself. The more we can become aware of it, the less they have us. That's just to add there.
Thanks, Sarah. And so there's 2 forms of movement that happen with the Enneagram. The first one we're going to speak to is vertical movement. The other one is horizontal movement. So vertical movement is through these 9 levels of health. Yeah, up and down these 9 levels of health, or through these 9 levels of health, that are divided into 3 categories. The top 3 being the healthy levels, the next 3 being average levels, and the bottom 3 being unhealthy levels. So from the lowest, level 9, pathological destructiveness, psychosis, breakdown. And then if you take that all the way through to the top level of liberation, ego transcended, balance, and freedom, free of the patterns of mind and behavior, so that you are choosing what is most useful and effective based on the situation at hand, and not based on a habituated set of patterns that you haven't gained the flexibility out of, in that sense. And so what we're going to do now, you're going to spend 5 minutes reflecting on where you might be sitting at this point in time. Okay, and so Lawrence, if you can put the link into the chat, and I wonder if I can exit this. Exit full screen. And what you're going to do is you'll arrive to this page and you'll go to your predominant type. You'll find your predominant type, and then scroll down maybe halfway down the page until you find the levels of development. You'll have the 9 levels, and we want you to spend time reading from the bottom. So level 9, okay, just reading through, and read through each one, and then get a sense for where you feel you spend most of your time. Yeah, and read all the way up to the top. And it might be 3-4 words in particular at a particular level that are really resonating. Oh yeah, I can see myself doing that. You won't need to share this bit, but just write those words down for yourself, and know that in moments of stress or fatigue, we have these switch points where we bungee down. So we might be sitting around average level of 4 or 3 most of the time, and then we get triggered, or we're stressed, or we're fatigued, and we're bungee down to some of these other ones, but we don't spend most of our time down there. When people come in for coaching, 99% of the time for one-on-one coaching, they're sitting somewhere around level 3, 4, 5, or 6. Yeah. And then we shift up towards that 1. Anything around the 7, 8, or 9 tends to, it's either they're working with a coach or potentially with a psychologist, a psychotherapist. Yeah. And all are useful options, and then eventually with a coach again in that sense. So take a look, click on that link if you can, find your predominant type, and take 5 minutes to read through there. Where do you feel you're sitting, and what are the, for a type 3, do you feel that you're quite image conscious, highly concerned with how you are perceived, and so on and so on? Which of that level really lands for you? So give that a go for yourself. We'll put some thinking music on.
Just to add there as well, these levels of health can vary in the weeks or in days, like Dan said, depending on the situation, depending on the context. So it's very, very fluid in that sense. It's not okay, level 3, this is where I mostly hang out, so that's where I'll always be or something. It's very, very fluid. So yeah, just keep that in mind as you go through this process. So you might maybe most of the time hang out, let's say, at level 3, but sometimes you really notice in particular context that you really drop down into level 6, let's say. So it's just to notice that that's very fluid.
As you read through those levels, maybe with some of the lower levels, notice where there were moments in your life where some of those behaviors were coming through, but you don't stay there necessarily. Yeah, it's useful. What we're wanting to do is simply to become aware of it. If in those moments where you were exhibiting those behaviors at the lower levels, if in that moment you were able to bring awareness to it, the severity of that behavior would already be reduced. Yeah. So if we can start to see some of these, and if we can use this to help us identify those as close to the moment happening as possible, that's beautiful. And also seeing what's available for your predominant typology higher up the levels. And you would have experienced some of those at times as well.
Maybe you can even identify a particular period in your life where you're operating most of the time from a particular level, and what that felt like as well, and how it maybe now is different to what it was then.
So give it a couple more minutes. Can we get a show of hands of those that would like a little extra time, or yeah. Have a couple minutes. Thumbs up for a couple minutes. Cool. We will have an open discussion as we can, in 20 minutes time. And so if you have any questions around this, please note it down now so that you don't forget. So as we start to wind up there, am I showing this fully? Ooh. Doesn't seem to be full screen. What's going on here? But, okay, so we're now going to move into horizontal movement, okay? And horizontal movement, if you can imagine this little image here, the Enneagram symbol, as a plate or a disc. And so you're moving along these lines or moving and accessing the typologies on either side, yeah? That's why we're calling it horizontal versus the vertical. Vertical is within the one typology, whereas horizontal is accessing traits, positive or useful and not so useful traits of other typologies. And what we want you to focus on today is that you have integration and disintegration. So for a 1, in disintegration, that would be to, in stress, that would be to traits of the 4, becoming more like unhealthy 4s. And in integration, a 1 carries through and also exhibits healthy 7 behaviors. We prefer to look at this as ease of access rather than here in growth and here in stress, right? So keep that in mind as well. You basically have easier access as a 1, easier access to healthy and not so useful 4 traits and healthy and not so useful 7 traits. And then you have your wing. So you can be a 1 with a 9 wing or a 1 with a 2 wing. And you've got those descriptors in that 30-minute audio descriptor. So as a 1, you have ease of access to 9, 2, 7, and 4. Yeah, so those are the ones for your typology we're really focusing on. Anything to add, Sarah?
Yeah, what can sometimes happen, the reason that we go from that vertical movement into sometimes an horizontal movement is because if the vertical stress becomes too much for a particular type, let's take type 1 as an example, if it becomes too much and it doesn't want to actually drop down into the actually the 3 lowest levels, so the unhealthy levels, it then as a sort of a strategy, as a coping, moves to another type, which is that movement into 4. And this is where it's actually a protecting mechanism of the typology to not move into lower levels of health. So that's why this happens vertical and horizontal simultaneously, or like can happen both ways in that sense. And like Dan said, we like to see it as ease of access. So type 1 can also access the healthy traits of type 4 as well. There's just simply more access. And for type 6, 9, and 3, you can see a triangle there. 6, 9, and 3 are different to the other typologies. They have very easy access. So the switch point for, let's say, a 6 to go to a 3 in what we might call stress is actually not that high. So a 6 can easily go to 3, whether that can be stress or that can also be growth. So 6, 9, and 3 have kind of like a slightly different, have more ease of access than, let's say, the other types.
Which was seen in all of your results, because a lot of the 6s, if you were 6, 9, or 3, then your second or third highest, it was likely that there was at least one of the other ones in there as well. I had a really beautiful analogy come up just then. Imagine you've got a biscuit with some cream in the middle, and it's being pushed down from the top down. Instead of breaking all the way through the bottom, it's easier, its ease of access is outwards, horizontally, and that cream pushes horizontally rather than going straight through the bottom. If anyone feels like a cookie right now, you can take a moment to go to the pantry and grab one if you like. Go for it, Sarah.
So yeah, we're just going to walk through what are the specific ways you can recognize these points of stress and disintegration and growth and integration. You see on the image here on the left-hand side, you see the green arrow is kind of for integration, and the pink arrow, the red arrow, is for disintegration. So that you can see it for each type and which directions it goes. Again, for type 6, 9, and 3, it's actually not green and pink in that way. It's just ease of access, so it can also be green in that sense.
And be sure to grab your pen and paper and be writing down for your typology the traits in stress, and then the traits of the healthy, what you might move into with growth. Just writing down the key words there, so that you can start to notice these for yourself.
Yeah. So for type 1, they become, as they experience stress, they become moody and irrational like type 4s. However, type 1s in growth can become very spontaneous, joyful, like healthy 7s. Type 2 become aggressive and dominating, like 8, when they experience stress. However, in growth, type 2 becomes self-nurturing and emotionally aware, like healthy type 4s. Type 3 become disengaged and apathetic, like 9s. However, healthy type 3s become more cooperative and committed to others, like healthy 6s. Type 4 become over-involved and clinging, like 2s. However, healthy type 4s become more objective and principled, like healthy 1s. Type 5 become hyperactive and scattered, like the 7 in stress. However, in growth, they become self-confident and decisive, like healthy 8s. Type 6 become competitive and arrogant, like type 3s when they've experienced stress. In growth, they become more relaxed and optimistic, like healthy 9s. Type 7 become perfectionistic and critical, like type 1s in stress. And in growth, they become more focused and very profound, like healthy 5s. Type 8 become secretive and fearful, like type 5 when they experience stress. However, in integration and growth, they become more open-hearted and caring and soft, like healthy 2s. Type 9s become anxious and worried, like type 6 when they experience stress. In their growth and integration, they become more focused on self-developing and energetic, like healthy 3s.
And so really take down what you've written down there. So it might be competitive and arrogant in stress for a 6, and more relaxed and optimistic in health. And start to notice, what are the situations that are bringing this about? And can I bring awareness to it and choose otherwise and simply soften rather than being in that contracted state and so on. But you'll be jotting these down as your self-awareness practice in moving into the next 7 days.
Yeah. So we also, from that previous slide, there is a wake-up call, or like a point that you can recognize, which is actually a beautiful opportunity to move into your path of transformation, so your virtue. So for type 1, as type 1s experience that they feel like they need to fix everything themselves and a sense of high personal obligation, the move of transformation of virtue is acceptance. So it's really acceptance. Yeah, they start to, as you notice it as a type 1 or any of the other types that we're going to mention, the wake-up call is a moment where you can recognize, ooh, I might actually move into disintegration here. So it's a moment where you can lean into the virtue. So for the type 1, that is acceptance. For the type 2, if the 2 starts to notice, hey, I must go out of my way to win others over, the path of transformation here, the virtue, is self-nurturing and receiving. So start to nurture yourself and start to receive. Georgina, beautiful sort of example for you. Start to receive compliments or help or support from other people. For the type 3, as you notice that you're driving yourself for status and attention, the path of transformation is authenticity and truthfulness for 3. So really just authentically expressing your real emotions rather than holding up a surface of what you expect other people wanting to see from you. For the type 4, as you see that you're holding on to feelings and you're intensify feelings through imagination, what is important for type 4 is to really let go and forgive yourself and see that those feelings are playing out, but not take them too serious in a sense. For the type 5, as you see that you're withdrawing from reality into concepts and mental world for yourself, you're creating a mental world for yourself, it's important to have compassion for yourself and for other people and to soften into more interaction with the world. So compassion here is the virtue. For type 6, as you notice that you become more dependent on things outside of yourself, whether that's other people or any other form of guidance or support through systems or planning or stability in any way, the path of transformation is courage and trust in yourself. So try something different, try something out of the comfort zone and trust that you can do it in a sense. For the type 7, as you feel that something better is available somewhere else and you feel like there's not enough here right now, the virtue is gratitude. So really leaning into, I've got everything already here right now and I'm grateful for that. For type 8, as you notice that you push yourself and you feel like you need to struggle to make things happen, often for the type 8 in a work setting, what is important here is self-surrender. So really softening in and surrendering that you don't need to push through to make things happen. It will happen out of itself with the right intention and enough energy, but it's not a pushy kind of energy. For the type 9, as you notice that you're outwardly accommodating yourself to others, so you notice that you're adjusting yourself, kind of what Bridget was mentioning before, that you're not truly expressing yourself because of the feelings and perspective of other people. What is important for type 9 is to self-remember. So that basically means that you first and foremost admit that you also have your own needs and that you start to see that in yourself and lean into more of that self-development kind of stuff. Yeah.
And so if you can, because we're going to be using this in the breakout room, write down what the wake-up call is for your predominant typology. And then also write down what the virtue is. I might get a show of hands once everyone's done that, so just a thumbs up if you've already done that. We might give it another minute or so.
By the way, the virtue is often not, it's available and it's where the type really moves into growth, but it can actually be quite a scary place to go, especially in the beginning. So acceptance or compassion or courage or trust is actually, there can actually be quite a lot of resistance to actually lean into that virtue. So yeah, just remember that for yourself as you explore this for yourself. Where do you feel actually resistance to show more gratitude or to show more courage or compassion or whatever ones of those is fits with your typology? It's not necessarily a very easy place to be. That's why it's the virtue, right?
Absolutely. If you can imagine, for example, for a type 2, if you're in a position where you're believing that you must go out of your own way for for others to win them over, how hard would it be for it to, when believing that, to move into self-nurturing and receiving? And so if you see this arrow as that is the path of transformation, remember we spoke to resistance during the week when we spoke to the ego, that when the construct is playing out, sorry, if you could mute, please, that'd be great. When the construct is playing out, you will be in a state of contraction and there will be resistance if you even dare think about moving out of that place. But please start to see this resistance as an arrow. The thing you are resisting, it is an arrow pointing to the very thing that you should be leaning into. It's pointing to your path of potential, to your path of growth. Yeah, really, really useful. Often when it's resistance, we're thinking something's wrong. Well, actually, what am I resisting? And that's the very thing I should be leaning into here to move into my potential and my growth there. Yeah. Can we get a thumbs up if everyone has written those down for themselves? Cool. Okay.
Could I ask if we could quickly go back to the previous page, because I came under 4 categories and I didn't have time to write down exactly
Sure.
for 9 and 5. Thank you. Thank you.
That one? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So all of this, as Georgina is kind of writing that down, beautiful thing to add here is that all of these, let's say it's stress or growth or wake-up call and path of transformation, function on a spectrum and function on a duality. So there's a push-pull energy that you can feel within your body where you notice that, let's call it resistance or like an aversion towards or a move towards. So moving away or moving towards, that's kind of like the dynamic that we're playing with here. Where do you notice yourself moving away from something or towards something?
Just throw us a thumbs up. You know, when and feel free to take a screenshot of this if you like. What else? Okay, so listening in for this practice in the breakout room, where we will be exploring the traits of stress and growth. So you'll be in the breakout room with one other person. And if you are person A, then for 2 minutes, you're going to ask the question, tell me times, well, firstly, the other person needs to share with you what their traits of stress or fatigue were. Whether it was defensiveness or resentfulness or whatever you wrote down when you had the virtue on the right-hand side and then points of stress or fatigue on the left-hand side, that's the thing you're going to let that person know. And then person A says, okay, tell me times you have brought defensiveness to the world. Person B will sit there and you don't need to say anything if nothing's coming up. You can close your eyes and just think of moments where defensive, oh yeah, there was a specific moment, and you say really succinctly, there was a moment with my brother where we had an interaction and an argument and defensiveness came up. Cool, done. Person A repeats again. Tell me times you have brought defensiveness to the world. Again. And you just wait until another moment pops up, and then again for 2 minutes. Okay, that just repeatedly gets asked. Then after 2 minutes, and we'll send a message in the group after in the chat, after 2 minutes, you'll be asking the same question, and the same person will be asking the same question, but this time, instead of the trait of stress or fatigue, you will insert the virtue. So person A, tell me times you have brought courage to the world. there was a moment when I was in high school and this situation happened, and you know, it took a lot of courage for me to do this. Done. Tell me times you have brought courage to the world. And you repeat and repeat and repeat for 2 minutes. And it doesn't have to be an elaborate story, but just allowing these moments to come up. So 5 minutes in total for that one person, first asking about the trait of stress and fatigue, and the second time round asking about the virtue. And after that 5 minutes, swapping over and doing the same. If you want to take a screenshot of this one line, tell me times you have brought to the world, do so or write that down so that you can remember that. And then we're going to come out after 10 minutes and share in a group on this, on the virtues, and then also horizontal, vertical movement and so on. Does anyone have any questions as to how that breakout room is going to play out? All clear? Thumbs up? Thumbs up is our way of communicating here. Cool. Okay, jumping into the breakout rooms and enjoy. Some smirks there. Fill us in. So how was that? How was the experience of that? You know, even speaking to some of the behaviors you may exhibit during stress points or during fatigue. Go for it, Dan.
Melissa and I were discussing, we're both threes. So the disengagement and apathy was our first one. And it was really quite interesting because, Dan, as soon as you said something, I noticed straight away, like when you said, oh, think of a time where you are, you know, disengaged or apathetic. And I was like, oh, I don't have those times. Like, I don't. And I was like, hang on a second. I'm disengaging and being quite apathetic, like straight away. And I was like, wow, that was definitely an interesting one. So yeah, it was very, but a lot more, obviously after that, a lot more came up. Yeah, so it was good. It was an interesting chat. It was cool.
Yeah, and you can see why we call them our default patterns. They just happen like that, right? It just happened. It's a tape recorder. The ego construct is a tape recorder. It's a, you know, learned behaviors, and that's why it's not necessarily the most true way to respond to a situation, because it's just doing what it's done so many times before to protect itself. It served you well at some point, but obviously not in every situation or as often as it does pop up. So really, really good pick up there, Dan. How was that for others? What was noticed?
I was chatting with David about my type 2 dominant Enneagram type. And what I noticed as I was talking to him was just the subtlety, just like how insane the subtlety is of it, just being there as like a little, I don't know what, I'm not having a little metaphor or anything to explain it, but it's almost like just like a little tint of the windscreen, just like ever so slightly, so much so that like I feel like my eyes have adjusted, like I really can't tell when it is playing out sometimes. So that can look like for me sitting at a party I was explaining to him, or a gathering where I feel like I owe it to the person who invited me to stay there and bring life to the party and joy and excitement and entertainment to some degree, to give them what they gave to me. It's like this transaction in my head. And it used to be really strong. And I would sit there and be like counting the minutes till I can go home and just go to bed. But I was just like, in my mind, I couldn't even see, like that was just how life was. Like that's just what you do. And I couldn't see that was a type. So once I was able to see that, the liberation that came with practicing just leaving and not even needing to explain myself, like being polite, but not having to over explain that, was so fun. Like it became really, really fun. So now it plays out more subtle. and it still plays out. But at the bigger points when I was just first seeing it, the repetition of it isn't as scary as it felt like for me at the beginning, and it just became something to play with that gets quite rewarding and fun when it becomes a pattern, to notice what the virtue is and then to do it. So yeah, it's kind of playful.
Absolutely. And to speak to that, Kate, that subtlety, or even if when it's not so subtle but you can't see it, it's no different to looking at your reflection in a window, forgetting that there's a window there and a whole world beyond that window. Yeah, we can look at our reflection in a window and like see ourselves fully and completely not be seeing the whole world out there through the window. And that's what's happening with this construct. Yeah, completely forgetting this whole world that's out there when we're only seeing ourselves out there, which is our pattern out there, and putting our pattern out there in that sense. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Kate. And to bring awareness to it, so that, you know, where there's layers of our capacity to bring awareness to things. And at first, like Sarah mentioned, it'll be the things that stand out like a sore thumb, the big situations, the big blow ups, whatever else. And we fine tune and we fine tune and we fine tune. And the things you'll be noting down and journaling down will be the little moments where you didn't even feel the need to say anything, but you felt an energy pop up, just the tiniest of energies. And you're like, oh, and you're catching it at that point. Yeah, really powerful stuff. Let's have another share.
I'll go. Was when you and I were chatting, Dan, and we touched on the gratitude thing. So I didn't actually connect the shadow behavior or to the gratitude. Like I didn't actually connect those two things. So when I identified something that I was grateful for, I realized that it helped me make a better decision for me. Steering away from that type 7, looking for something, that something could be better, if that makes sense. So looking for the grass is always greener. So when I realized that identified a time that I was grateful, it actually helped me make a decision to stay where I was.
That was with work. That was work related.
Yeah. But going through that now, I can probably connect that to a few other times as well, just with different things. So it's like, okay, yeah, that does actually resonate with me really well.
Do you mind if I share that around the work piece?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So, looking for opportunities elsewhere because there's probably something better than what I've got here, and realizing that the thing that had moved Jared into growth was actually gratitude, and fully realizing what he already had, and that it was a little bit silly to be looking out there when it was what he already had was pretty fulfilling if we allowed it to be for us in that sense. Cool. Lee Duncan.
Yes.
Giggling away in your little corner there. What was happening there?
Oh no, the dog just ran in the house as soon as the door opened. So it's all under control.
Okay. Antoinette?
Yeah, for me, I'm type 9 and the peacemaker, and I felt the anxious and worriedness about raising the children. Before I had children, there was nothing, I lived my life, just everybody, just worrying about myself. And then I had these 3 children, and I got anxious, I got worried. At the same time, I got energy from it. So it's the thing that you have to be, and it gets you excited. So you have to be very aware not to push the children away, to be over worried. But I think it's for parents, it's a lifetime issue. And even if you know you are worried and anxious, you don't. It's not going away. It's So it's a lifetime of work over here. For me, it is. So at the same time, it's energetic to work with it, and you have to the growth part, the in the development. You have to see that you develop yourself. Otherwise, you can't take care of your children. But you need to take care of yourself. And that's what I've learned very much in the past, and still learning. So it's
beautiful
and
feeling.
Maybe a lot of parents recognize it.
I saw many heads nodding up and down, Antoinette, in agreement with you. So yes, I think that is a common experience, and you're speaking to filling the cup from which you give as well. And often it's quite we're giving, and whether it's to our kids or to others and at work or whatever else, and hey, but I need to give. But if we just always need to put the oxygen mask, even in the plane, who do you put the oxygen mask on first? Yeah, because if you don't put it on you, then you can't save the kids next to you. Yeah.
And also, Antoinette, you mentioned type 9. Last time you did the test, you had type 2 coming up. And type 9 and type 2 actually very often get confused with each other. So it's for you to explore for yourself which dominant type, as a dominant type, resonates more for you. Just as an exploration, so not taking the test to be the be-all and end-all. This goes for everyone, by the way. Just the test is a test, and it's for you to see it in day-to-day life. What are some things playing out specifically for you? And seeing the nuances there, because otherwise we're getting confused. And again, we're not our type, so whatever is playing out.
It's every time I look at both of them, and I see both of them somewhere in the middle, something is happening. So it's exactly how you. Thank you.
Cool.
How's that for you, Mel? Moss?
I'm glad you made me speak, because I wanted to speak, but I didn't want to, what I totally resonated just then with, and it's something that Daniel brought up, and then Antoinette just brought up. I struggled at first to think of where I could possibly disengage. I thought this apathy doesn't really exist, but then I realized that it is when I get stressed with the kids. I do disengage as well. So I totally resonated with what Antoinette was saying. And Dan actually brought it to my attention too, and kind of clarified that a bit, because I just I couldn't get past that idea that I would be disengaged with something. And turns out I am. So yeah, that's where I'm sitting here. Yeah.
Beautiful, Mel. And not that this is what I'm about to say was a planned part of this session, but start to notice for yourselves the things that you're pointing fingers at out there in the world. You might be frustrated about something in another person. Yeah. And just as a little exercise, whenever you're feeling that and you're like, I can't believe they just did that, whatever that is, ask yourself, do I ever do that? When have I done that? And then very quickly, just that whole notion around whenever we're pointing a finger, there's three fingers pointing back. And the reason you reminded me of that, Mel, was because when we're looking at those traits and behaviors of when we're stressed and fatigued, they're not who he loves those traits. Well, we need to learn to love and accept that sometimes that happens. Yeah, because if we don't, to the point where it's like, when have I ever been X, Y, Z, right? Then we're just kind of, you know, turning a blind eye to that, and we don't have a chance in hell of integrating that, accepting that, and transcending the limitations of that, to even look at it and to see where it's not useful, where it has its limitations, and also the learnings from it, which help us transcend its limitation. Transcend and include. Yeah. So important. Those the bits that are uncomfortable to look at, please allow yourselves to lean in and have a look at those.
And also, if you look out in the world and you see things or traits or particular behavior that you really much appreciate in others or almost admire in others, that's the same dynamic there, right? So it goes for both ways. Things that you dislike or things that you really very much like in others. Both are in a way not accepted or allowed in within the construct, or are done by the construct but not appreciated in some way or seen in some way. So it goes for both ways in that sense.
So that one's called Golden Shadow. More on Golden Shadow in the course that follows this one here, whatever we end up calling it. Mastering.
Can I also just mention something?
Yep.
Sorry. I don't know if anyone else felt this way, but I realized that we're already on week 5 and I started panicking going on. We're halfway. What am I going to do without this course in 5 weeks? So I like that you keep talking about the next one.
So really, really useful to be checking in with yourself as to, okay, well, how have I been showing up to this point in the course for myself? Yeah, how's the sitting practice going, and how's the journaling going? And okay, if this is half the game, then, and I'm looking forward at the next half, how would I like to show up, and what would I like to continue doing moving into the next 5 weeks? Yeah. So we're going to now shift gears. Actually, we've got a quote here for you.
Just to add on what Dan said there as well, is next week we have a integration session. So there's going to be a bit more space in that session to look at all the weeks that we've just had so far up on today, and to take a bit more space, a bit more time and we're going to move through an integration exercise there.
So we're really, really going to ground the last 5 weeks with you and for you, yeah? So that it becomes easier and easier to see all of the content that we've been speaking to for the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, just to speak to this quote for a bit. So, the Enneagram is a tool that awakens our compassion for people just as they are, not the people we would wish they would be or become, so our lives would become easier. So with everything that we've shared on the Enneagram, it's all these virtues and these points of stress and these points of integration and growth and basic fear, basic desire. It's in a sense to become more compassionate with ourselves and find more love for ourselves and also for other people. So if you see your family member moving into stress or into a moment of despair for themselves, to recognize that and help them also leaning into their virtue potentially and supporting each other in that sense. And it's really not to point out, hey, this is what I see you doing here, but to be really, there's always a positive intention no matter what we see in people. So that's also one of the reasons that we share this tool, right, as a tool to really awaken that compassion for ourselves and for others in that sense, and help each other and support each other as we walk each other home.
And you might be sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I'm pretty good at accepting others and so on, and having compassion for others and all of that. Even if you are as good as you are now, it's not the fullest potential of having compassion for others. There is a ceiling effect to it if you are not doing it for yourself as well. That is the key. Full unconditional love for yourself and compassion. And that's a practice in itself, to be clearing and allowing that in. I had a coaching call on, it was actually Tuesday with a client, and he had actually said, not on this call so I can share, so he had actually said to his father, well, you weren't that great of a father, so here's your opportunity to be a good grandfather. And he didn't realize that him pointing at his father not being a great father was a projection and a non-acceptance and compassion for how he had been showing up and how he hadn't liked how he had been showing up for his kids over the last 3 years. And so that was being put onto them. So really it's to, it was for him to find compassion for himself fully as he is now, with the relative behaviors and traits, as well as the absolute essence of everything that you are and the beauty that you are, but also to not look to change his father at all. So think about who you have that sort of a relationship with, where it might be mum, it might be dad, whoever, and to actually come into it not wanting to change them at all, regardless of how much you think they should do this in that way or that in this way. Yeah, that is conditional love, and it means that conditional love lives here if that's happening for oneself. So I'll bring you all in here again. And if everyone can, I'm going to get you to lie down on the ground if possible, but still be able to hear me. So if that means maybe, and if not, then, best done in a lying down position. But if you can't, then seated, but make sure that you can fully get floppy and relax in that seated position. If you are, then you're not going to fall off the chair, Mike. Otherwise, lying down on the floor if you can. Give it another 10 seconds. All you need to do is be able to hear me. No need to be able to see. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a progressive muscle relaxation technique. Really, really useful before going to bed if we've had a big day, but even doing it once a day. And we're going to recalibrate the tension in our body. You may be lying there now and feeling like, there's very little tension in my body. When we're in a heightened state, because we've been doing throughout the day, that becomes the norm. And so it becomes really difficult to notice, am I carrying tension? Am I not? And so we're going to recalibrate and bring ourselves to a maximum amount of tension, and I'll walk you through it. And when we get to that maximum amount of tension throughout the entire body, we're going to hold there for about 30 seconds, squeezing all of these areas of our body. And then when I say so, to gently start to release and allow that tension to ease out of your body, but not all at once. You're going to spread it over the course of 60 seconds or so. So gently and slowly letting that tension out over the course of 60 to 90 seconds. And so laying there, arms and hands by your side, head nice and comfortable, eyes closed. Now let's start building up the tension in our body. So I want you to start to squeeze your fists as tight as you can. The muscles in your forearms, in your arms, tensing those. The muscles in your face. Show us a lemon face, squeezing your eyes, nose, cheeks, mouth, shoulders, chest and torso, glutes, buttocks, quads, back of the thigh, legs, feet, toes. And now making sure your entire body is nice and tight, squeezing, 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 and holding that squeeze. Hold, 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 hold. Lemon face, hold, hold. In a few moments, we're going to gently and slowly, not all at once, just 1% at a time, letting that tension ease out of the body. So starting now to slowly release that tension. Gently and slowly. Just a little bit by a little bit. Letting that tension melt away. Continuing to allow just a little more tension to be released. Brushing your awareness from your head down to your toes, allowing the tension to fall away bit by bit from your eyes, face, jaw, shoulders, arms, wrists, hands, fingers, chest, torso, hips, buttocks, thighs, lower leg, ankle, floppy ankle, feet, toes. Now just brushing your awareness across the rest of your body, gently, slowly, allowing yourself to soften just a little more, just a little more, just a little more, just a little more. When you feel like you're completely tension-less, softened, just a little more. Regardless of any urges, allow yourself to be here in complete stillness. No need to move. No need to do anything. No need to hold on anymore. Release. and return. Gently bringing some slow movement back in to your fingers, toes, ankles, hips, gentle roll or stretch the shoulders. Your neck. Taking a deep breath in. Gently and slowly out. Taking your time to open your eyes and keeping this stillness in its cup without spilling it, and mindfully bringing yourself aware of each movement back up to your seat. Okay, so I want to use the next 7 minutes or so to check in around how your sitting practice is going. First 3 weeks, we're on the breath. And then we had the next 2 weeks, including this week, on body awareness and letting go of tension. How's your practice going? What are you finding challenging? Either within the practice or between practices, doing the practices. What's happening? How can we support you?
If I'm in a high emotional state, I often don't like to meditate. Like it's almost, it just makes it harder for some, like it's like something in my head's like, no, don't do that. Just, yeah, I don't know. Maybe because like there's some part of me that's scared to fully love, because I know that if I sit down and meditate, like it's more of an acceptance. I think there's a part of me that's scared to fully love that feeling that I'm having in regards to my ex-boyfriend. So I think it's just a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, Bridge. And if there is going to be a sitting practice that would be easier, it would be the Ujjayi breath, where you're fogging up the window, and doing it quite, as strong as you like in that sense, but just allowing your mind to be fully with the breath all the way out, all the way in, and on every turn, and just being in the loop of the breath and being with the breath and being with the breath and allowing the breath to be deeper and longer and slower. Yeah.
Dan, I can find Justin. I can find simply breathing being overwhelming for me.
And what about breathing are you finding overwhelming specifically?
Story I tell myself is I have 2 deviated septums, like I have breathing difficulties, so that must be why it's hard to breathe. But I sleep every night and I breathe deeply when I'm sleeping, so I suspect it's more, I don't know, about anxiety or.
And so
Yeah.
Next time you're experiencing that, go into the breathing, slow it right down, but you're going to carry something with that. Slow it right down with a mental attempt to get as overwhelmed as you possibly can. Okay? I want you to lean into, see if you can turn the notch up on getting as overwhelmed as you possibly can whilst slowing the breathing right down. Yeah? And just give that a go.
Thanks, I will.
How's everyone going? What streaks are we on? This is our time to gloat. And I hope you've been gloating in your pods, sharing, because what we're going to be doing, we didn't reveal this to you, we should have told you at the beginning. You're going to be counting those crosses up and then accumulating the crosses across your pod group. And we're going to see which pod group accumulated the most days of sitting. And then, I don't know, some sort of a special prize or something might come your way. How are we going with the streak, and have you missed a couple days and jumped back on? Yeah, or have you found the resistance around jumping back on? How are we going with that?
I found, Dan, as soon as you set the task, being an achiever, I went, I'm going to do it every day, and I have. But I have almost found myself judging myself for doing it every day, which I shouldn't be, I know. But as soon as you set the task, I knew I was going to do it, and I have. And that sounds so arrogant, but that's the achiever in me that I went, okay, I'm going to do that. Having said that, the benefits to doing it every day have been amazing, and I'm having clarity throughout my day and improved sleep, and I'm calmer, and I can catch myself. I can take those moments throughout the day, and I'm so much more aware of my body. But that's, yeah, I found that playing out. I sort of found it amusing, and then I started judging myself because I thought, well, of course I've done every day, because that's what I do. I'm not in a good way. I'm not gloating. It's kind of like I was like joking to my boss, Quint. I said it would probably be more refreshing if I hadn't done every day, but I have. I've done every single day, and I knew I was going to. So I'm sort of, playing with that. It is playful, it is funny. I can see it's funny, but I can see the judgment playing out that, well, of course I did every day, because that's what I do.
And let's just hope that you're not in a pod with the other 3, Dan, and maybe even Lee, because then the other pods don't stand a chance in that sense if we bring that competitiveness in. Thanks for sharing that. And for anyone that feels like, oh, I'm just really struggling to get on any sort of a streak, remember the neuroscience behind habit development. Make the decision to do it, and then sit down and do it, even if it's for 10 seconds. Who here could genuinely say that they couldn't commit to 10 seconds a day of taking a moment, closing your eyes, focusing on your breath? When you've done that, you've actually triggered the new neural pathway of sitting daily, even if it's for 10 seconds for 90 days. You've made the decision and you've embodied it by sitting down and taking that action. Yeah. And then go from 10 seconds to 2 minutes, 2 minutes to 5, 5 to 10. If you're sitting around 5, let this be the point where you bump that up to 8 to 10 minutes. Or if you're sitting at 10, bump it up to 15. But for anyone that is looking to bump it up from wherever they are right now, next sitting, do it for an additional 20 minutes to whatever it has been now. Yeah, so if you've been sitting for 5, sit for 25. And then for the sittings after that, sit for 10 or 8, whatever you want, or 12, you choose. Yeah, if you've been doing it for 10, sit for 35. Yeah.
Just what came up just in response to Mel, your sharing, do you feel like you can choose also not to sit? Do you feel like that choice is available?
No.
Yeah, sure. So with any of these practices, in the beginning, there's a bit more of a, like Dan said, like a conscious effort to actually do it daily. And that's for a lot of people actually quite a challenge, right? To actually commit to something and do it daily. For you, it sounds like what you're sharing is kind of like the other way around. Like it's a challenge to not do it. What we're doing in all of this process is gain flexibility and choice. So potentially start to play around with it.
Not yet, Mel. Get past the 66 days, get past the 66, 70 days, yeah? And then have a day a week or 2 days a week where you choose not to, in that sense.
Yeah, sure.
Acquire the habit and then lean into it. It'll be a really good practice to lean into it and then be able to be like, actually, I didn't meditate for 3 days there. I broke the streak. That'll be really tough for you, particularly when it's at 90 days. And then coming back into doing it consecutively and just letting it be done. And so I want to speak to body awareness and why it's so important. Sorry, if you can mute, please, that'd be awesome. Body awareness is more than just becoming aware of the body physically, right? Oh yeah, I can feel the body and the tension and so on. If we're becoming more and more aware of the tension in our body and so on, then we can become more aware of the energy that runs through our body as emotion when we are triggered. Yeah, in situations when we're frustrated, angry, overwhelmed, and to bring ourselves into how that is playing out in our body specifically. What's the specific energetic signature that's playing out in our body in those situations, rather than being in the head and trying to think our way out of the situation that was caused by our thinking in the first place. Yeah, and so this body awareness is pivotal. Body awareness and your breath are the two pillars of your sitting practice. Moving into the next 7 days, along with potentially extending your sitting practice, a small, real subtle addition, or actually a negation rather than an addition. Stillness. So a negation of movement, any movement. If you're sitting for 10 seconds or if you're sitting for 10 minutes, allow yourself to fully soften, no tension, completely still. And if you experience an itch or pain in the back or the hip or the knee, then simply observe it. Go to the very epicenter of that pain, of that itch. Where is it most itchy? Explore it with your mind's eye rather than, oh, I'm just going to scratch it. Yeah. And sometimes there might not be any pain or any itch, but the body might just, and it can happen quite reactively, the body might just go, oh, just for a moment, and then you go back into it. That's a distraction from the stillness and the nothingness, because we're not used to being in the nothingness, being in the space where there's doing nothing and not so much thought. Yeah? And it's just the construct being triggered, looking to occupy you again in that sense. So stillness is what we're bringing in, and really allowing yourself to be still from beginning to end, but not still with tension, because you can be super still in tension. Fully let that tension go and be in your stillness there. So let's close out. We'll close it out, but first I'll show you what your practices will be, and we'll finish the session off with the 5 minute sitting there.
Then there was also a question from Michelle in the chat, which is why are we adding an extra, or why should we now add 20 minutes to our current sitting is the question.
Yeah, so it's progressive overload. When learning any skill, we're wanting to, let's just say you're learning you're learning a language and you've been doing level 1 of the language for a while. It's really useful to momentarily, before you go to level 2, attempt level 5 for a week. And you've really tried hard at level 5, level 5, level 5. And when you come back to level 2 or back to level 1, it's like, oh, geez, this isn't that hard. But as long as we were just doing level 1, our upper ceiling was the ceiling of level 1 in that sense. So by extending it and coming back, it often becomes easier. Actually, one of the guys that work with us, an employee in the physio clinic, I told him to do 25 minutes. I forgot to tell him to do come back down to 5, and he ended up doing 25 minutes every day, and he was struggling to do 5 minutes to begin with. So see how you go. But I hope that makes sense, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful. Your SAP for this week, self-awareness practice. Notice the moments in the day, week, where you move into direction of stress. So those things that you wrote down for stress. So noticing your wake up call, the moment where you're like, oh, this is potential disintegration. And notice the moments of growth, of virtue, and the traits of those, both of those. Really important to count both of those. And journal it once a day if you can. Sitting practice, letting go of tension, starting with the breath and into stillness. Any questions around those? Cool. Let's take 5 minutes now to really drop into, we're just going to collectively drop into breath, letting go of tension as you have been, and then absolute stillness as you've let all of that tension go with a slow breath and just not moving at all, fully relaxed, return. Okay? Relax, release, return. So closing your eyes, getting yourself comfortable, taking that first breath in and all the way up. Allowing the tension to melt away from your eyes, face, jaw, shoulders, and the rest of your body. Coming into stillness. Being aware of the sensation of your body as a whole, sitting here in this space, allowing any further tension to be released. Every so often, simply checking in with your awareness of your body and allowing any tension that may have crept up into your shoulders, jaw, or face, or hands, or hips, and relax, release, and return into stillness. Bring your awareness back to your breath. Taking a deeper breath in. And all the way out. And be sure that at the end of each of your sittings, you're not rushing on to the next thing. Take your time, even after the gong goes off, to open your eyes gently, slowly. And allow your movements to not be rushed. Taking a moment before you get up out of your seat, out of your chair, out of the bed. Opening your eyes when you're ready. Bless you. Georgina sneezed. That wasn't a bless you. May God bless you all. Okay. Thank you everyone for showing up, week in, week out. Next week is a really beautiful week where we get to play, we get to ground this stuff. Write down your questions throughout the week. Notice the ego, the superego. Notice these patterns play out of the personality, and notice the levels of consciousness out there in the world and maybe within you, and write down as many things as you can. Bring them into next week's session. We're going to have fun. Have a beautiful week, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See you next week.
Bye. Stop recording there. Thanks.